I mean, sticking with it. That's the thing, is like a lot of, small businesses, they give up early because they don't have the tenacity or whatever, like pick a word that,
grit,
the grit that goes in there. But for us, it's just like, all right, well, that didn't work. Screw it. Try this. That didn't work. Screw it. Try this. That didn't work. Try this.
If you're looking to leave the 9-to-5 and elevate your side hustle, the Hustle the Day podcast is the podcast for you. Your host, Trent Bray, left the 9-to-5 grind behind and is helping others do the same and focus on the future. Hear from others who have done it and how they did it. Jump in as we talk entrepreneurship, mindset, and strategy. Just take it one day at a time and hustle the day.
On this episode of the Hustle the Day podcast, I've got my first ever interview with two different people at the same time. Julie Traxler and Corey Harris of SB Pace. They are friends and neighbors who became business owners together last year just as the pandemic was hitting, and it has been an interesting experience for them, but really excited to share their story today. Let's jump into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hustle the Day podcast. My name is Trent. Super excited to have Julie Traxler and Corey Harris here. Corey, I'm going to let you jump in and introduce yourself first, and then we'll have Julie introduce herself.
Awesome. Thanks for having us on the show today, Trent. We are SP Pace. So our business is small business consultants. We focus on startups, growth strategies, that type of stuff. Julie and I have been in business for about a year now. And we're out there just helping small businesses. That's, I don't know. Julie, what you got?
Well, now I'm going to tell you about me and about Corey, since he so graciously told you about our business. So we combined have like over 40 years of experience, a lot of it with small businesses. We were on a mergers and acquisitions team together. That's where we first met. I hired him, and true story, I hired him because he could fix a toaster. So that is how we met. Both of our parents were small business owners. We come from small business families, and Corey has a really strong background in systems and process, as well as he spent a number of years in restaurants. So he really understands like end-to-end flow and like optimization and the importance of service. And my background, and he's also the money guy. He's our finance person, because you can't trust me with math. I'm more of the social one. So I do sales and marketing. I have the social media. I'm the person who, builds the relationships and has the conversations. And then we execute together in terms of what we're delivering, but we really pair very nicely in terms of like the services and the skills that we have, right? His strengths are my weaknesses, and my strengths are his weaknesses. So it's a good combo.
Yeah, that is a perfect combination. And, I've personally been involved in a partnership before, and you just get excited about somebody who wants to help you on your business, and you're like, oh, great. Well, you can bring this to the table and I can bring this to the table. But one thing that we didn't discuss beforehand is what roles we wanted to have. And we both ended up wanting to have the same role within the company. So is that something that you two discussed beforehand? And how do you help other people maybe dive into those waters of a partnership and make sure they're compatible like you two are?
I love where this conversation is going. And I will start it by saying part of the reason that I love where it's going is because we have a client right now who has a partner, and his partner literally does nothing to help him. And so Corey and I are kind of filling that gap for him. But I frequently, because of that client, I'm reminded of how fortunate I am to have this guy as my partner, because I know anything that I need, I just have to ask. And I also know that we can have really difficult conversations and just be like, look, this is not going well, or I don't feel like we're delivering to the level that we should be. And that's kind of how we wrapped up the year of 2020 was when we did our strategic planning for 2021, we started by doing a retrospective and then really talking about how can we better hold each other accountable, and how can we like get better at the things that aren't going well. And so I think because there's a really strong level of trust between the two of us, we can have the tough conversations, and it's easy to work through like any issues or problems that come up because we're very, very honest and direct with each other. And probably because everything is built on a really strong friendship.
Yeah. And I think that humility is a huge part of that. Myself, for example, I like to think that I'm an expert at everything and I can do everything and I don't want to ask for help. I hate asking for help, et cetera, et cetera. But it is really nice to just shoot an email, a text, whatever it is, and be like, hey, can you just do this thing? Because I don't want to. I'm not good at it. I don't like doing it, whatever it is. Just knowing that there's somebody there to like pick up the slack and it's not even necessarily slack. It's just like, I know that I'm not good at this. I can do it. I'm not going to do it well, but you can do it better. So would you just do that?
Yeah, no, I understand. And you got to have those tough conversations. I love that you brought humility into it because I think that does play a big part into it. But if you didn't have those tough conversations at work, you can't just go off and escape and, be off to your different places and unwind because it turns out you're neighbors as well. So if you don't have those good, tough conversations, you can't escape from it. So that's great that you can do that and move forward and understand each other a little bit better because of that.
Yeah, for me, one of the hardest parts of the past year of launching the business has been that we can't escape it, right? It's in every conversation that we have. And that was a big part of what we talked about when we were doing our strategic planning for this year was like, I know this will sound ridiculous. I get it. And I'm going to say it. And I mean, Corey would never utter these words, but I will say it. We could spend like 10 hours working, like one day, like just sitting in what we call conference room, the executive conference room, which is really just Corey's kitchen, and working. And then I could leave and go home and I would actually like miss Corey. And the reason that I would miss him is because we just spent 10 hours only talking about work. And we only talked about work for like the last 3 months. And I miss our friendship. So we had to draw some boundaries around how we could like stop talking about work at certain times so that we could, just engage in our friendship again. Like, we go to the gun range or something and it's like, okay, that's not a business trip. That is a friends going to hang out. And so no talking about business. And I'm the one that's really guilty of always bringing business in. And so I know
I'm pretty sure you owe me a couple $1,000s in bets.
Yes, I probably do. And so I just, I have to make a conscious effort on that. But I think that part has been the bigger struggle for me personally is there are times where I'm like, I just miss my friend. I don't want to talk about SB Pace today.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, because we had this conversation, was it yesterday, maybe? Just talking about, I think it was on our podcast that we recorded yesterday with Cheryl, where like, it's like, oh, we're always on the clock. I'm always working. And I'm like, I don't have a problem taking time off. I'm like, you need to learn how to just shut it down, put the phone down, close the computer, just disappear. Like nobody needs an email at 11 p.m. period.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then you're speaking to me a lot there because I grew up with both my parents being entrepreneurs and a lot of the family being involved in that company. And Sunday dinners, all it was work talk, and I'd try and interrupt and be like, "Hey guys, this is Sunday dinner. Let's keep it family. You can have work on Monday." It didn't really ever work that way, but I at least tried to steer it in that direction because at one point my wife was working for that company too, and it definitely got to those conversations of, oh, hey, did you do this while you were there on Friday? It's like, all right, guys, like family now, business later. Well, you've got a lot going on. I mean, last year you just started the company. You just moved to basically the same area. You started the company. Pandemic happened. You decide to write a book. You start a podcast. Clubhouse became a big thing that, Julie and I are probably way too involved in. But the question is, how do you have a strategy in place to help tackle all that? Because I know as a small business owner, it's really difficult to think, okay, I've got to be here. I've got to be here. I've got to have that omnipresence, but then also do those tasks really move the needle forward? What's your strategy for kind of combating being everywhere and also being a part of the business?
I mean, one of the things that we do well, and I say we, Julie does well. She's the project manager of the group. She's good at planning. So it's, setting up the weeks, setting up the schedules. It's, creating the calendars, like all of that. And it's for us just dividing and conquering, and again, playing to our strengths. One of the things that Julie is really good at, and it's a pro and a con, is her business ADD. So for probably the first 6 months that we were in business working, we'd have our daily meeting, whatever. And I just dreaded the conversation because she would come in hot. Like, all right, we got to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, slow down. Like, let's talk through it. Like, we haven't figured out these other things. So for us, like that was like finding our voice, finding like where we're strong and what we do. That took a while. And then, but once we figured it out, we've just been hammering it. That's a little too much. So, but
yeah, we outsource where we can. So we definitely have some people that we depend on regularly. We don't, aside from like video creation, which I do, we don't do our own social media. We have a girl who's amazing, and we're trying to figure out every way we can to get her to come work for us full time, because she's the best. So we outsource where we can. And one of the other things is that we really figured out, it probably wasn't until like October or November, that we needed to come in stronger on the message of if you're not ready to do the work, we don't want to work with you, because the stuff that we work on is really hard. Launching a business is not easy. Creating a growth strategy so you can go from working in your business to on your business, it's effort. It's a lot. And it's an upfront investment for business owners to make. And so many people complain about wanting to make that shift, but they don't want to do the work. They can't find the time to do the work. And I'm like, dude, you can't make the shift if you can't. It's going to be hard work up front, but it's going to be so worth it on the back end. So finding ways to really work with clients who are going to do the work makes it easier for us to get things done. And then really focusing on like our top priorities, right? So if we look at everything and this is why we left corporate America, we felt like we weren't able to add value to the level that we could add value. And so now we control that. And it's part of the reason that we're really just so excited about our new program, Foundation 52, because there's so much value in it for small business owners. So if we know it's going to bring value, we can build a plan to focus on that and execute against that. And we just figure out what are the top priorities we're going to do. And we move forward that way. But there are days where I get lost. Today was one of those days. My mornings got hijacked, right? And you kind of get lost in the stuff that's coming your way. And you're like, wait, I got to pull back because I got to figure out what are the real priorities for the day.
Yeah. And I think like one of our biggest faults, more so mine than Julie's, but we just like helping people just in general. And, like it's part of the sales process. Like somebody calls and they want to, talk through whatever. And then, you get to know them, et cetera, et cetera. And then at some point we figure out that this person either isn't going to be a good client. We don't want them, or they can't afford us. We had a conversation earlier this week with somebody, and she's a sweetheart, and she's got like a great kind of business idea going, but she doesn't know business. And like when Julie had the conversation with her and was like, how much can you afford to, pay somebody to help? And she was like, $50. We're like, okay, let's just now just a charity case. Like, let's just get on a call. Let's figure out how we can get you to where you can afford more than $50 to get, pay somebody to help you. And I mean, we had a great call, and that, it was fine. But yeah, that's for me, like I grew up in restaurants, and I know what, food costs or beer, liquor, soda, whatever it is. I can associate a cost to that, I am terrible at selling my time. And that's one of the like the hardest things for me is like, oh, you just want to pay me to like talk to you? That's weird.
So should I send the invoice to you after this or?
Yes.
No, Julie, you struck a chord with me though. Something that I think every entrepreneur, if they dig down deep enough, what it really comes down to is they want to create an impact, and you have a limited opportunity to do that within a 9-to-5 environment, and you have unlimited opportunity to do that within your own business structure. And sometimes it may be a $50 charity case, far cry from $15,000 packages that you offer. But at the same time, you're creating that impact directly, which is really exciting and really unique and something that you can really only get in entrepreneurship or maybe, a legitimate charity, something to that effect. So another thing that you touched on that I want you to go in a little bit more depth on is what is working in the business versus working on the business.
So I'll take the first pass at this one. We see this frequently, and I know when you hear how we describe it, it's going to resonate with you. You have business owners who, they launched a business and probably maybe it started as a hobby. It started as something they're super passionate about. And the easiest way to explain it is by using an example. So we have a good friend who decided to launch a knife company, and it was completely by accident, right? So he had been hunting. He didn't have a good knife. He lives in Illinois. He was hunting in Montana. And on the drive back from Montana to Illinois, he stopped literally at every sporting goods store, Gander Mountain, Cabela's, like everything you can think of to look at knives. And he's like, these knives are like $400 or $500. I'm not spending that kind of money. I'm gonna go make my own. So he buys legit a $20,000 forge and invests 70 or 80 hours of his time to make a knife. He makes this knife. This is 2016. And he posts a picture of it because he was really proud of it. And some cat on the internet was like, hey, can I buy that from you? And he was like, sure, like $50. So, a huge investment. And for 4 years, he repeated that cycle. His prices have increased, and and they're the most beautiful knives ever. Corey got me one for my birthday. Corey has 2 of them. They're amazing knives, right? Now his price has increased, but 4 years he went without ever having one for himself. So he bought that, did all that work to have a knife. 4 years, he finally creates his own knife. And now he is doing it as a side hustle, and he literally works 10 hours a day on this business and wants to make it his full-time thing, but can't figure out what levers to pull to make that happen. And I'm like, there's no reason you have to be working that many hours on this business. There are things you hiring people. And I'm sure, we've heard this over and over again in Arate, Trent. That first hire is really, really scary, especially when the first hire isn't a friend or a family member. And you got to figure out, do I trust this person? Can they do the quality of work? And so taking somebody who is spending just ungodly amounts of time working and doing everything from, making the knives and doing the marketing, taking the pictures and doing the selling and updating the website, and they do it all themselves. And it's if you just build a strategy where you look at how you're hiring and you have a marketing strategy for how you're going to post and when you're going to post, excuse me, and you have a sales strategy and you figure out your capacity and how long does it take to make each knife and what's your cost of making each knife. And you look at everything holistically in your business and you just start to slowly move them out of the pieces and outsource pieces of it, or just make it more optimized by implementing systems and processes. And you can get them from that 10 or 16 hour workday to being able to, maybe they're still going to work 10 or 16 hours, but they're going to be running the business and making big decisions for the big picture rather than doing all the little things and never getting to the point where they have a strategy.
Yeah. And that's, for me, especially like, having owned, a handful of restaurants and that type of stuff in my past, just learning how to just give up like control. I'm a control freak. I am, admittedly. I like to know what's happening at every point, and I like to know that I'm in charge of everything that's going on. But like at a point, I was working on my fourth, so it was a small chain of cafes here in Richmond, and I was like, I'm working like 100 hours a week. Like I'm splitting time between 3 different spots. I'm working on a fourth, and I'm like, I just need to give up. Like just trust somebody, hire well, train well, and then get them to do the stuff that I shouldn't be doing. Like I needed to work on building the brand, and that's where I added value. Like building the brand, improving the processes, negotiating with vendors, that type of stuff. I didn't need to be opening the store. I didn't need to be there, managing people, writing schedules, whatever it was. And that was a hard thing for me to figure out. And it still is hard, but I know now that I can, if I train well, I can just give that up and somebody can run that for me so I can do the things that I really need to be doing.
It's one of the hardest things that we've seen small business owners have to do is making that transition, because, they've been there from the beginning. They've done all the things. They know their business inside and out. And it's really hard to kind of take a step back and let somebody else have a little bit of control for a short period of time to help you move that business along. It's very, very difficult. We have a client right now who we are helping him with his growth strategy, and he has a very specific number he wants to hit. And, we've got a process and he wants to do everything at once. And we're like, just slow down. Like just relinquish some control and just trust. Like, you hired us for a reason. And there are some tough conversations. We're like, oh man, again.
So Corey, you mentioned something that I thought was interesting. If you don't have to be there opening the restaurant when you were in the restaurant space, but some people feel like they have to, lead from the front, and they have to set the example and be there to pick up the trash and all these things. And a lot of that is established in, say, like core values and things like that. But at what point do you think a business owner can say, okay, these systems are established, or do you feel like they get pulled back in when people aren't necessarily living up to those core values?
I mean, that really depends on the business owner and what they're willing to give up. For me, it was just knowing that like I had to trust myself to train well. And, obviously, I'd show up at a shop or whatever it was. And I didn't like the way this was, or we need to, there's certain things that need to get fixed, but overall, it's not going to be perfect. Like, the only person who can make it perfect is me. And I'm the only version of me, for now.
That's a different podcast, Trent. That's a different podcast.
But I need to know that if people are going to do the best that they can in their version of what I think their best can be. And that's, what you just need to encourage and train in your employees. It's not, like I said, I can always walk in and do something better in my mind, but it might not even be better. It's just in my mind, it's better. Yeah.
It's really emphasizing the core values to the employees and having that woven throughout. Like, typically if there are issues with service, or you're not getting great talent, that you can point all of that back to leadership and what they're doing and how they're executing against the core values and building things out. And you really have to trust what you're doing.
Yeah. And Julie and I have had this discussion numerous times in terms of when it comes to hiring. Because again, I working in the restaurant industry, you're getting the dregs of society. You're most of the people applying for the job are the unemployables. And Julie's like, oh no, there's a way that you can do it better. You can do it better. And I'm like, I don't know. I did it for 14 years. I don't know if I can, but I'm slowly getting convinced that I could have been hiring better. And that probably came back to my core values and all of that just being open and honest with, who I was and the business that I wanted.
I bet you any money Trent agrees with me. There's a way to do it, right?
Yeah, I think there is. So it comes down to setting things up right initially, having that all those systems in place up front, rather, I'm trying to say. It's about having those systems up front rather than having to go backwards and trying to fix them later. And that's where things get really important in starting a business too. So talk to me a little bit more in depth. You mentioned Foundation 52. What is that program and what does that help you do?
Oh, I'm going to gush a little bit, and I hope that's okay. Corey's probably going to roll his eyes a little bit, but I think he's on board now with where I'm at on this program. This is, to me, the most important thing that we're going to do as a company, this Foundation 52. We, as Corey mentioned, we love to help, and we spent the bulk of 2020 giving services for free to people because we knew that small business owners had just been hammered all year long. And we created this program, which is, it's available for pre-sale now, but it launches officially on the 15th of February is when people can start accessing it. There's over 200 hours. It might actually be closer to 250 hours by the time it's ready to launch of content. So it's a 52-week program, self-paced. And we provide a roadmap for how you should approach, how we recommend you approach it, but you can access the information in any order that you want. So if you're struggling with marketing or you need some help with sales or you want information on systems and processes, you literally just have to go find the video. And every week comes with videos. It comes with what I would refer to as, it's almost like a podcast because it's just an audio file, but it's Corey and I talking about that week's content and giving some examples and giving additional information. And the reason that we created that is that's going to be part of it is because the program is going to be on Kajabi. And, Kajabi has such a great mobile application. And so people could be in their car and listen to one of the audio files and get some great information. It has tip sheets. It has Q&A for each week where we list out possible questions that people might have and the answers for it. And there's some worksheets. And then there's monthly live Q&A calls with Corey and I to answer any questions that small business owners have. And we priced it super low. It's $97 a month. So small business owners can afford it. And that was really our single biggest thing was what's the price point that pretty much any small business owner could afford. And, and then just hammered on the value that's in the package. So on pre-sale, it is actually $20 off a month. So it's $77 a month, but it's an upfront payment. If you sign up for the $97, it's just $97 a month that they're going to be paying, but we're really excited about this program.
Yeah, that sounds really, really helpful. And I think you're going to deliver on the content, just knowing a little bit of your background, Julie. Corey, I've just met you before we started recording, but I've known Julie for a little bit through, like she mentioned, the Arete Syndicate. And so I know you guys are going to deliver the value on that. That's super exciting and really helpful to the small business owner. So you just recently went out on your own, at least in this company rather, and obviously 2020 was just a year of pivots for a lot of people. Outside of the obvious pandemic, what would you say was a challenge that you never expected when you started this business?
I mean, for me, it was really defining what it is that people need. That was the hard thing. If you conference room number 1, where we are right now in my kitchen, has seen some changes over the past year, but there used to be giant sticky notes all over the wall. And we had, just list upon list of this is what we are, this is what people need. This is what we had. We even wrote scripts for conversations. So when somebody calls us, this is what we're going to respond and all of that. 99% of that has been burned up in my fire pit. Because it's we knew there was a void. We knew that there was something out there that we could provide. It just took us forever to get around it, not forever, but it took us like 6 months to figure out what it was. And I mean, sticking with it, that's the thing, is like a lot of, small businesses, they give up early because they don't have the tenacity or whatever, like pick a word, they could,
grit,
the grit that goes in there. But for us, it's just like, all right, well, that didn't work. Screw it. Try this. That didn't work. Screw it. Try this. That didn't work. Try this.
Yeah.
That didn't work. Oh, we're going back to square one.
I think he right now is sort of making jokes about my business ADD. For me, the thing that was the most surprising, that's the question, right? Most surprising or the biggest challenge?
A challenge you never expected.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about support, right? So, you start a business and you're so excited about it, and you're just, telling your network and telling people, and support doesn't come from where you think it's going to come from, right? Like you're thinking, oh, my friends and my family are just going to like be telling everyone about what we do. And that's not really what happens. Like no one is ever going to care about your business more than you do, nor should they. But you'll meet these people along the way who are either not even part of your network or who are on the peripheral of your network. And they become these key players in supporting you. Like they believe in you. And sometimes they believe in you more than you believe in yourself, and really push you. And it's great because you've got this new network. It also, for me, I really had to learn to temper my expectations of friends and family for what they were going to do. And that was hard. Like there were a lot of days where I would be just like angry at someone like in my network, because I'm like, why are you not supporting this or helping or whatever? And then I finally realized like that's not their job. That's our job. Like we have to push this out and make a difference to the world. And it's, we certainly get support from people that are, in our network, like our friends and family, but I've learned to not expect it and just be so grateful for when it happens. But that was the hardest part, I think, for me of 2020.
Yeah. And kind of playing on that, like for me, not having any social media and not being the type of person who likes to ask for help. It's funny because like one of my uncles, like early on, he bought a package of our books when we did the pre-sale and signed up for the blog and all that. And it wasn't until like December, so like 3 or 4 months later, that I realized that his wife, my aunt, wasn't on any of our like distribution. She wasn't receiving our blog, wasn't like subscribed to the podcast, anything like that. And so I just reached out to her and I was like, oh, hey, you might be interested. And she's like, oh, that's amazing. And I'm like, shit. Like, all it took was one email. And like, she's one of our biggest supporters now, but didn't even occur to me that I needed to send her just a quick email. Oh, you might be interested in this thing.
Yeah. And asking for the feedback and the testimonials, right? That's so important. Like, I think we talked a lot about this in 2020 of there are so many ways that you can support small business owners without opening your wallet, right? There's so many things you can do. You can subscribe to a blog. You can share the information. You can like their posts on social media. You can engage in the content. You can make referrals. Like there's just a ton of ways to do it. And I feel like we're getting much better at asking about that, right? And just saying, hey, like now, if you interact with us, I'm asking you for a Google review. Like I'm asking for it. And we've gotten better. And I've seen over the course of, this now almost year, a really significant shift in Corey in that he's much more open about telling his story and sharing about himself on social through our posts. Like he doesn't love it, but he will do it because he recognizes that we are the brand, and people listen to our podcast because they like us, because they want to hear from us. And so we've just recently shifted our approach to the podcast, and it's more story-like in the front end where it's just him and I sharing knowledge and stories and whatnot. And So that shift has helped because it feels less like it's just me on the front line if he's there partnering with me on it. But and he's gotten better at asking for help. Like I'm telling you, just on Wednesday was our last session. This past Wednesday was our last session of the Business Essentials Academy, which was a 10-week course that we launched for people to either build or like start a business or build a solid foundation on their existing business. And there was like just so many industry experts that came on and talked about a variety of topics. And our last session was all Corey. He was talking about business plan. I've never seen anybody who's better at business plans than this guy. And so like 30 minutes before the class started, he called me and he goes, "Hey, can you like take the final section of this class tonight? Like just like talking about sales and marketing, because I don't know anything about it." And I'm like, "Yep, I got it. I'll do it." Right. And 6 months ago, he would have never asked for that help. He'd have just been like, "Oh, I'm just going to wing it." So he's gotten better about that.
Yeah. Also, Corey may or may not be my real name. Just throwing that out there.
We won't dive too far down that road, but we talked a little bit before we started recording about that support system, and you know what, it really is interesting to see where that support comes. And sometimes, like you said, Corey, it's just saying that email to say, "Hey, thought you might like this." Sometimes we get into our own feelings of, "Oh, what if they don't like it?" Well, you're not going to advance your business if you're always worried about what other people are going to think of what you're doing. And I've gotten some great support from people like you mentioned that are on the fringe, that you that aren't really deep into your network like you think they would be. And I think that's what makes it important when you start your business idea, to reach out beyond your friends and family, the people that may not be your biggest supporters. They may be your biggest supporters on the face of it, but when it comes down to brass tacks, they're not going to be necessarily the ones that are supporting you with their wallet. So sometimes it is helpful to go outside that or on the fringe of your network, like you mentioned, and really get feedback on what you're doing and how you're planning to launch things. And you might get some good feedback.
Agreed.
So one other thing you mentioned before is you kind of specialize in businesses that are 3 to 5 years old. That's where you can really help people out and really help them grow. What's kind of been a common thread or a common theme that you've seen with business owners that they wish they would have started 3 to 5 years ago, and now they're coming to you and saying, "Hey, help me with this"?
One of the biggest things is people that have, they start really fast and they haven't thought about the foundation, right? So they don't have core values. They don't have a mission statement. They don't have any strategies in place. And so typically those are the people that we're going to see that are, they're working in the business and not on it. And it's not uncommon at all to see that they don't have that. They don't even have a business plan, right? They just started. And so we're almost going back to scratch and saying, all right, let's build in all of these things. And I think what surprises me the most is the number of people who don't understand the value of any of those things. They don't know why they would need a business plan if they already have their business up and running, or why do I need core values? Like why is that important?
Yeah, the foundation is definitely critical, and that's something that a lot of people don't like work on. They don't have that set when they start their business. The other thing that I always find interesting, and I'm the numbers guy, I'm the math nerd over here. It's just how many people are just afraid of financials. Like they don't like, they're scared to look at their numbers. They know that they've got money in their checking account and they can pay their bills and that's it. It's, what's your cost of goods? Like what does it cost to run your business? What's your profit? Like all of that type of stuff. We have a group that we work with. It's a handful of dentists here in the Richmond area. And we were talking to them about their the call out rate, like the number of cancellations they get, and like how many, what percentage of their day is spent with empty chairs in their in their practices. Not one of them could answer like with any certainty of like, oh, I think it's this many or whatever. Like I have an idea, whatever it is, but like they have no idea. And it's just like stopping to look at the numbers could make so much of a difference for everybody, when they're running their business.
Yeah. They don't know the cost of that to them. That's not uncommon. It's also not uncommon for people to not know what it costs them if they have a product. And I bet you any money, Trent, if we asked you this question, you know the answer. What does it cost you to make your product? What are you selling it at? And what's your margin in there? And a lot of people don't know that. They have no idea. And, one of our clients right now is really like hustling hard to make some sales. And we started, as we were building out this new product that he's offering, with a very specific price point. And he just kept dropping that price point. And then finally got to a price point where we're like, what are you doing? Like, you're like, do you know how many of these you now have to sell just to like, and he had no idea, because he wasn't thinking about it from the numbers perspective. He's thinking about it from what price could I sell this at that I would sell the most possible? And I'm like, but you're losing money on every sale. Like, you have to look at it holistically, and people don't know to do that.
Yeah, it is interesting. And fortunately, being a small business and having to know some of those things hands-on and not having to outsource any of those things, I do have a good idea on my numbers. But yes, I do experience that a lot with other people that just really have no idea, and they really don't care to know. But they don't realize what they're leaving, or the opportunities they're leaving on the table by not knowing that information.
Yeah, I liken it to when you're like in college and you're running on your bank account is just always running really close to the edge. At least most college kids are. And you go to the ATM to pull out some cash, and that receipt comes out, and you just crumple it up and you throw it in the trash because you don't want to know. And some of the most difficult conversations that we have with small business owners are the conversations where we're getting them to understand that it's okay that they're not financial whizzes. Like the barrier to entry, Corey always says, barrier to entry to open a small business is really just have enough cash to open up the doors, right? So you don't have to have like a background in finance. And let's face it, not a lot of schools are educating people on how to be entrepreneurs. So being able to help people understand this isn't uncommon, and you don't have to be embarrassed about not understanding your finances. That's what we're here to help with.
Yeah. And that's, one of the things that it's always interesting when you're like I said, the barrier to entry to most businesses, just having cash. My brother's a dentist. He's probably, he's a little more in tune with what's going on with his business than most other dentists. But he went to dental school, spent some time in the Air Force, went and specialized. And then, so he was in school for, a decade, well over a decade, just to, get to where he was. Walks into a bank and he's like, hey, I want $500,000. They're like, all right, cool. Here you go. He was blown away that he needed nothing other than the fact that he had doctor in front of his name. And they're like, here's $500,000. And talking to him and many of his friends and colleagues, and just how many people have failed or are just backwards because they don't know business, but banks are like, yeah, here's money later.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know somebody here locally who is buying up dental practices throughout the United States because dentists don't want to handle the business side of things. They're in it to be a dentist. And so he's taking over several practices and running the business side of things and that's what he's working on right now. So I totally understand and can relate to what you're talking about of they don't know these numbers. They don't really care to. They just want to do the work that they were trained to do.
Yep, exactly.
That's exactly what happens.
Before I get to a place where you can plug where people can best find more information about you, I want to ask you, personal or business, what is it that excites you about the future? And we started with you first, Corey, at the top of the episode. So I'm going to let you go first, Julie.
Well, great. I appreciate that. So what most excites me about the future, I would say I'm going to, go back to the Foundation 52 program again for us. I'm really just so excited about that. And I think the fact that spring is just around the corner excites me because it's been a long few months of darkness and literal darkness with shorter days. And I'm looking forward to the long days and getting outside more and doing more things outside that are not in front of a laptop.
Yeah, I can agree to that. And I think that regardless of, politics or anything, that, I mean, this year is going to be much better than last year. And I think that people are going to be like, they're going to go out, they're going to want to do more. They're going to, they're looking to make up for a lost year, essentially. And I think that 2021 is going to be very, very interesting from that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. People are ready to get out and be outside and be moving. And, I've experienced that myself doing, some real estate. People are moving out to the suburbs in droves because, hey, if you're going to be quarantined somewhere, you want to have a yard now. So you can remote work. You don't have to be in the city anymore. So
100%.
Well, very cool. I appreciate the time that you've given me to come on the podcast. I really appreciate that. So I want to give you a chance to plug where we can best find you and more information about you and your company.
Perfect. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Probably most active on Instagram in terms of like posting like content, really meaningful content and videos and whatnot. You can find me on Clubhouse. I love hanging out on Clubhouse. And we'll let Corey tell you about our book.
Well, yeah, you can connect with us via our websites.
Oh yeah, we have websites.
Yes. So we've got the sbpace.com, which is our website. And then we've got bizquickpodcast.com. We're not as active with that one, but we've got both of those going. And then you can buy our book on Amazon. So you can click through our website to get there. It's Seriously Now What? A Small Business Guide to Disaster Preparedness. You can, like I said, buy it on Amazon, and we've got a digital workbook download available.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And personally, I've got your book on Kindle. I like having the digital copy of it, but yeah, it's a great book. I definitely recommend it. And you know what? I'll make sure to include links in the show description so people can just click and find you a little bit easier. But I know I've gotten a ton of value out of this. So I know my audience has gotten value out of this. So I encourage you all to get out there and hustle the day.
Thanks, Trent.
Hey everybody, thank you for watching this video all the way through here on YouTube. One thing that would help us out tremendously to share this value with more people is if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, make a comment, share it with others, click that bell notification to say, hey, I want to see more videos like this. That would tremendously help us out, and I would sincerely appreciate if you did that. Thank you again for watching this video.